So the brain actually has some really distinct characteristics that separate it from a computer. The brain is actually a laboratory, and by our design and by our own will, it acts as a laboratory to take concepts, ideas, and models. And in the certain part of the brain, it builds those concepts and ideas. And it says, I'll take a little bit from what I learned here, and a little bit from what I remember here, and a little bit of my experience here. And let me take those specific areas and ask the what ifs, the possibilities, the potentials, contemplate on designs or ideals that are outside the boxes of what our present understanding is to come up with a new understanding or an enlarged box. So the brain acts as a laboratory, it's an architect. It designs models and it puts the pieces together. And it's its main function is to come up with a new picture, a new concept. And by repeating it over and over again, there comes a moment when we become so involved in that concept, so involved in that idea, that we lose our attention or our awareness on our external environment, on the signals that are coming from our body to our brain, and on relative time, because all of our awareness has gone within, it's gone to that concept and idea. The moment that happens, that picture, that model, gets pushed or moves to the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is the area of the brain that is the executive. When an idea or a concept makes it to the frontal lobe without our mind wandering to a shopping list and the pain in our back and what time it is and who we have to call and our relationships, we've put all those aside and we no longer keep re-accessing or re-interacting with parts of the brain that are already known within that box, but we're taking those individual concepts and models and ideas and building a bigger concept, and we lose track of our association to people, to places, to things, to times, to events, and we are completely focused on or concentrated on that idea. That's the moment that that idea makes it to the frontal lobe. And when that concept makes it to the frontal lobe, it becomes more real than the external environment. We lose track of the external environment. And that internal picture now that becomes more real than the external environment is literally where reality is happening, because all of our awareness is there. At that moment, another part of the brain becomes activated. That part of the brain is called the cerebellum. It is the oldest part of the brain. It has millions of connections per neuron as opposed to thousands of connections per neuron in the neocortexes. And that ability for that brain to become activated literally endorses or gives life to that model and causes the brain to become rewired and actually change reality, our perception of reality. The best way that a human being can become that observer is, first of all, having the awareness or the understanding intellectually that they don't always have to make the same choices over and over again. And secondly, put yourself to be put in certain situations experimentally in your own personal life where you actually override those mechanisms in your body, and that takes practice. It's not something that we can do immediately because there is a tendency biologically for us to respond to preserve the body. The brain has certain centers in it that are only concerned with the preservation of the body. And the moment that we respond, those centers kick in, and it becomes almost breaking the habit of being human. We have to gain control and override those physiological functions that happen in our body. And the moment that we do that, each time we override those physiological responses, we're changing brain chemistry and actually breaking the addiction to that stimulus and response that so many people live by every day.
Is there a physical change that happens in the brain, or is it just in some nebulous mind state that this change happens?
Well, in order to explain the physiological chemistry in the brain, let's just back up here and give you just a little bit more on anatomy so that and brain function so that we can address the chemical changes that take place in the body. But remember, we talked about that tree that has all those branches that connect to other trees, and every place that it connects forms a thought or a memory. And that memory becomes wired in the brain. And if we get a series of experiences and information, we call that whole cluster of neurons a neural net. Well, every experience that we've had in our life